Welcome to the Bayesian Conspiracy. I'm Eneasz Brodsky.
I'm Steven Zuber.
I'm Jay Sticky.
And we have an interesting conversation today, but before we do that, we're going to do the Less Wrong posts like we always do, right, guys?
Just
like we
always.
failed to do last time.
Yes.
Okay.
It was good times having Wes on last time. Wish I could have been here.
It was. Speaking of good times, I listened to the Mind Killers episodes. I finally got caught up on the backlog, including the most recent one, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Is your mind currently dead?
Yes, but for other reasons.
Okay, good enough.
All right.
So, we have some sequences.
Yes, our first sequence today is called Positive Bias, Look into the Dark. I just want to make sure that is the one we're on, because I missed last week, but then you didn't do last week's?
I think we're doing, positive bias and say no to complexity.
Okay, good. All right.
And we can just skip positive bias, because everyone here has read Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, and if they listened to the companion podcast, We Want More, we covered this in, I think, Chapter 8, which I think went by the same name. So
I think we could do it again, though, because...
I'm just kidding. Yeah.
Okay. We're all rationalists already. We don't need these sequences.
Yeah, we're already perfectly sane.
And, I mean, people who are coming back listening to archives afterwards are not necessarily listening to things in the same order, so maybe they're going to get to the We Want More after they're done with this or whatever.
I was confused because these are in the opposite order on lesswrong.com.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Say no to complexity comes before positive bias.
Oh.
But I think that they kind of, I don't know. Does it matter what order they're in? Kind of, but not really.
Not particularly. Positive Bias was posted on the 27th of August, 2007, and Complexity was 28th, so in chronological order, this is correct.
So let's start with positive.
Excellent. Stephen, you have told us what this is about already, so would you like to kick us off?
Oh, sure. So positive bias is essentially where... In a sentence, it's where you try to confirm a hypothesis rather than falsify it. And this is distinct from confirmation bias because that's more like seeking out sources to fit with your pre-existing position. And this is more of like, all right, I've got this idea. Now I'm going to try to test to see if this idea is true rather than see if this idea is false.
And what is the example he gave us that was later immortalized by Hermione Granger?
The 2-4-6 task.
Yeah, didn't they call it Petals Around the Rose in the story? Or
no, that was the one I used in We Want More because Brian had already read the chapter before I gave it to him. Which I stole from I might have been a Alexander Wales 2-chapter
that
fanfic.
Was the really good one that wrecked me.
Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Zombie.
That one.
Yeah.
Hey, does anyone else want to be destroyed? Read that story. No more emotions.
Well, speaking of being destroyed by stories, I just finished the first Last of Us video game today. So we did talk about that like 4 or 5 years ago on the podcast. So everyone who wants to go find it, it was I think on our episode on like utilitarianism or something. So anyway, the 2-4-6 task is essentially where what was it? Peter Wason, not Watson. Basically, the premise is I have a condition that the integers 2, 4, 6 passes the condition, and I want you to guess other numbers to see if it passes or fails. And then when you've done enough experiments, tell me what you think the condition is.
Yeah, I think they gave them... I don't know if they gave them 3 or if that's just what they had as students' guesses in the article. I want to say I think they got 3 chances. No, it says you can test as many triplets as you like. Okay.
Yeah, and the one in the article is one student's guessing. So they do 4-6-2, which returns a no, 4-6-8 returns a yes, and 10-12-14 returns a yes. And I like this. At this point, the student wrote down their best guess at the rule. What do you think the rule is? Would you wanted to test another triplet, and if so, what would it be? Take a minute before continuing. Now, this isn't fair because we already all know the answer. The three of us, anyway.
I think if you've been reading the sequences, even if you don't know the answer, there should be something about Eliezer's tone there, at least to me, that was like, ha ha ha, you're trying to get me right now. There's some trick here. I'll let Stephen reveal it.
Oh,
for everyone
well,
who
I
doesn't
guess
know it.
before I give the answer, it was I think the replication of that study shows that there's a success rate on the first guess of about 20%, which means that 80% of people think they've got it and they haven't. So the rule is the three numbers must be in ascending order, and it's that simple. People would make these convoluted rules, or they would like again, 4, 6, 8, increases by 2 each time. 10, 12, 14 also increases by 2 each time. Okay, the rule is it has to increase by 2 each time, and that's not it. So it can be as long as they're in ascending order. That was the rule for this task.
Yeah.
It's a fun little test, and if you get a chance to test out on your friends or coworkers, it's a great way to make friends and
enemies.
Yes, and enemies.
Yeah, but the point is that the person who wrote down 4, 6, 8 and then 10, 12, 2, it didn't occur to them it occurred to them to keep testing things that would confirm, but never testing one that would disconfirm by saying, for example, 4, 6, 10, because that would disconfirm their guess that it always goes up by 2, and they never asked something like that.
That's the generalizable lesson, is if you have a hypothesis, try to see what wouldn't happen and test for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
Yeah, I liked that, it's further on in the article, but there was a really good line that I want. Yeah, here it is. We ought to think about both positive and negative examples. Which automatically pops into your head? You have to learn wordlessly to zag instead of zig. You have to learn to flinch toward the zero instead of away from it. And that's hard. Like, rationality is not easy, because it does mention this is like, I got this wrong. Or I think he says that he got it wrong when he tried it.
Yes, he did.
That was in the next. Yeah. It's like, so like, it's not about being stupid or smart. It's about, you have these instincts that you have to have some kind of heuristic to check for. You're checking yourself constantly. I know that people are reliably wrong in this way. I know that I am a person. It's hard to do, though.
And that the subtitle of this post, it's called Positive Bias, Look into the Dark. And the reason he calls it Look into the Dark is because looking for examples that prove you wrong kind of like feels bad. It's not natural. That's why he says look into the dark. Like, look for things that would prove you wrong, or that would prove your hypothesis wrong at any rate, to find out whether the hypothesis is actually correct or not.
Yeah, I think this is a small-scale example of what ended up leading to the replication crisis, where the same thing with, scientists still wanted to get a yes. Sort of how we're, I guess, trained in school, the whole ideas that this all rolls into, guessing the teacher's password and so forth, where we're kind of taught to be conformist. We're kind of taught to try to get a yes. I feel like it's almost kind of antisocial to look for a no.
Yeah, that's a good point with the replication crisis. If you're always just looking for ways to confirm your data, that's much easier. But if you look for things that might disconfirm it, it's work that, you don't want to do, because then it disconfirms your idea.
Well, and it's hard to get more funding when you say, yes, I showed there's nothing here.
Yeah,
So,
that's another main thing.
And this is like a nice, neutral, non-emotionally charged way to test this sort of general principle, but it gets like the look into the dark part where it's actually scary, where you have to flinch towards the scary thought rather than away from it, is when, if you're considering something of emotional salience to you, and, what would make my important belief that I have, this is just a hypothesis about some number game, right? But if you have like this important belief about, especially something political or whatever, trying to, like, even the idea of looking for numbers or looking for contradictory evidence just feels uncomfortable and wrong for, I think, everybody, or at least most people. I think, if I were to count myself among them, even rationalists, like testing to see if my, emotionally salient political belief is true or false, or especially to see if it's false. There's like a bit of a fear reaction there, and so it's important to just face that and try to be less wrong about stuff. Hey, that's the name of the show.
Hey.
I remember this was actually like a college professor I had. It was an art teacher, so maybe this gets more of a free pass, but he was talking about something about like the mysteriousness of nature, and I like being a smartass, said something about, like, I knew the biology of how the thing he was describing works, so I said it, and he's like, you scientists always trying to quantify things.
Oh my god.
And I was just like, yeah, that's exactly do you not know the scientific method?
Do you not realize this is the name of the game? This is how the world works?
It's like that it ruins the beauty. You're destroying the rainbow by running it through a prism or something.
Yeah.
Whatever that poet thought. I actually know what he thought. I'm just being intentionally obtuse about it.
It's because Keats was a sour grapes nerd, and if you want the real awesomeness of it, check out Unweaving the Rainbow. That's going to be my 5th plug for that book on this show so far.
And, yeah, +1.
Should we go on to the next post then?
Why don't you lead us in on this one, Inyash? This one's kind of fun.
All right, this one is Say Not Complexity. So as far as I can tell from this one, it's basically he's saying, look, just saying something needs complexity is very much like saying something is an emergent behavior. He says he was talking with someone he was working with on how to create an AI that could discover how to solve a Rubik's Cube, and several times in the discussion, the other person said, well, I think the AI needs complexity to do X and complexity to do Y, and Eliezer said, don't say complexity. Or I believe his words were, yeah, don't say complexity. All right.
I'm imagining him leaning forward and placing one finger on this other guy's lips and going, don't say complexity, leaning really close.
Oh my god, creepy. And the guy asked him why not, and he says it should never be a goal in itself. You may need to use a particular algorithm that adds some complexity, but complexity for the sake of complexity just makes it harder.
Can I bring up the next thing, though? Because
yeah,
he put in little parentheses after that one. I was thinking of all the people who I'd heard advocating that the internet would wake up and become an AI when it became sufficiently complex. I was called out by that because that used to be one of my pet theories when I was in high school. I didn't necessarily say because complexity, but I think that was what I was thinking about, though, that surely when it gains more functions, it just needs to be bigger.
Right.
And more complex, like a brain. It's got neurons like a brain, right? And then it'll become a brain.
That was totally a thing in high school for me too. Yep.
It is a compelling idea until you look at it that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he pointed out that what you're doing when you're saying things like complexity or emergence is just skipping over the mysterious part. And that's not helpful at all. You need to pay closer attention to that. And is this the one we said? Yeah, this is the one where they introduced magic. So as a workaround for this, because there were some issues that they couldn't tackle everything all at once, they had to lay out some things, and they developed this convention that whenever they ran into something that they didn't understand, they would use the word magic, as in X magically does Y, to remind themselves that there was an unsolved problem here, and they had to come back to it. And that was, they were like, if you use the word complexity or emergence, that can hide the issue. But if you say magic, then it's really obvious that there is something missing here that you need to go back to later.
I like that. It reminds me of a writing technique where if you have a placeholder when you're writing a first draft, to make sure that you see it, use a swear word there.
Mm-hmm.
I forget if a friend of mine made that up, or I might have even made that up, but when you're going back and editing, you can't not see it. But yeah, it's that kind of thing that wow, that doesn't belong.
Do you remember what Mark Twain said about very and fucking?
Which?
Okay, so I think it was Mark Twain, but this may be suffering from the whole, all quotes eventually get attributed to famous people. He said that you should remove everywhere in your document when you're writing, you should replace the word very with the word fucking. Because afterwards, your editor will go back and remove the word fucking from everything, and your manuscript will be better.
That might have been actually where I got that idea from.
Okay.
Although I don't think I had heard that before. That does sound like a very Mark Twain thing to do.
Yeah. Instead of just saying, don't use the word very, he gives more practical advice.
I think that the application of calling out a mysterious part of your plan, whatever it is, with the word magic is generalizable beyond solving friendly artificial intelligence. Like I've at least used the technique in small form, like when talking with how to, I'm not architect levels, so like when planning out something with a coworker at work, and they're like, all right, well, we'll find a way to do this, or whatever, bus messages from here to there or something. And I'm like, all right, well, since that's not a actual implementation, I'm gonna, let's put magically move this from here to there, so that we know that this isn't like a solved part of the architecture yet. And I think complexity is a good word to look out for, and it makes me think of, I have an issue with people using the word just, not as in justice, but I
just wanted to let you know.
I mean, even that's actually not so bad. Mainly, it's like if someone says, "Oh, that's just because you're whatever, a Democrat," or "Oh, we're just atoms," and that's close to like the not mere that we've talked about, or at least is in the sequences somewhere. But I find that in most, or like, "Oh, well, why don't they just go out and get another job or something," or whatever it is. Like so many times when people use the word just, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting that I don't think they realize that it's using. So I have this little flag that goes off in my head whenever someone uses the word just, kind of the same way that I think Dan Dennett had an article at some point somewhere that said whenever someone uses the word obviously, he also
Simply
has a big flag
mine.
that goes off. Simply, that's what it was, yes.
I use a lot of, I like to read stuff on Blinkist, which is an app that creates, or I guess someone writes them, distillations of long works of fiction. And it's great because it's like, here's an entire novel in bullet form, but they get so obnoxious sometimes when it's like, and how can you do this? Well, simply, you just have to reconfigure your entire life goals and learn to be assertive. It's as easy as that. And it's just like, I feel like the original author probably didn't put that in there. Or if they did, then they're douchebag, because like it drives me nuts. And I always hear this with like programming. People think programming, oh man, there's this stereotype, that programming is hard and boring, but actually it's easy and fun. And I'm like, no. If you tell kids that, especially, or if you're like somebody who's not already psyched about learning programming, and you tell them it's easy and fun, they're going to try it, find that it's hard and boring, and be like, well, I guess I must be an idiot because I'm not finding it easy and fun at all. That's, anyway, sort of.
It's a nice combination of all four of those things.
Probably someone who wrote like programming textbooks back in the day is the kind of person who would find programming to be fun, and as an extension of that, probably like easy enough to understand in concept that it feels easy and fun to do it, right?
Yeah, or you're already at like, I learned this when I was trying to teach art lessons for beginners. If you've already like reached like if you have an art degree and then you're trying to explain the basics to somebody, it's so easy to just, inferential distances again, coming all back to the sequences, but you can talk right over their head without realizing it. I was trying to like teach how to draw the proportions of a human face, and I kept having people like raise their hand, be like, wait, go back. Where do I put the eyes? Where do the eyes go? Stop. Like, they're in the middle. No, you drew them on the forehead.
Surprisingly lower than you think they would be.
Yeah.
I went over that in detail, so I was a bit annoyed, but it seemed like people weren't listening. But also, like, you have to, I don't know, from like the perspective of someone who's like, obviously this thing, but like, you really have to hammer something home if it seems unintuitive,
Because people are usually trying to draw a face, and the face like starts at the eyebrows and ends at the chin, so the eyes are way up. And you're like, no, you're not drawing
about
a face.
The whole skull part of the head.
Yep.
But it looks super weird if you put the like eyes way up on the forehead. Anyway, yeah, I actually feel like learning to draw would be a really good, like, I might do that once we start being able to like have in-person meetings again, but learning how to see is sort of key to learning how to draw things correctly, and a lot of people see things in symbols, and you don't realize you're doing it until it's pointed out that, like, actually that's completely anatomically incorrect. Were you looking at the thing? They're like, oh yeah, no, wait, no, I wasn't. Oh dear.
Yeah, when I had someone teach me how to draw a hand, and particularly fingers, I was like, well, that tells me a lot about how my mind works. That was very interesting.
Hands are complex. Your brain wants to simplify it into I don't know, usually people draw like a bunch of little hot dogs.
Yep.
Or like
was
a little
exactly
popcorn
it.
thing. I don't blame them. Hands are awful. Humans are really hard to draw. Like, I actually like to teach people. Okay, we're getting like off topic, but I like to teach people to draw humans or animals because they're the most complex things. Like drawing rocks and boxes and whatever is super easy. If you can draw a human, you can draw anything. We're so squishy.
I can draw small straight lines pretty good, like a Necker cube. But I've never been, I've never had anything like whatever. And I guess it's probably, I mean, some people have some, no doubt, native talent for it, but they get there and they make it look easy through lots of hard work. But I've seen people who can, sit there during notes, in high school, rather than take notes, they'll sit there and sketch something, and it comes out looking amazing. And I have no idea how they can put what's in their head onto the page with their fingers. I'm not dexterous enough. Yeah, exactly. It's practice. But I think that's another thing, and just totally a one sentence aside, that like anything that looks effortless but you try and is really hard, it only looks easy not because the person who's doing it is like just naturally really good at it, but because they put in a lot of work to make it look that easy.
Yeah.
And some things look really easy, and you're like, oh, I could do that, and then it turns out to be fucking impossible without lots and lots of practice. I think juggling is a really easy example to pick up, like, to illustrate this point quickly. Like, watch somebody who's good at juggling for 30 seconds on YouTube or Reddit or whatever, and then, it's like, oh yeah, they just throw it and catch them. That's easy. And it turns out that the word "just" there is doing a lot of work.
Yes.
They are doing that, but it's all of the little motions and whatever maneuverings involved that are, like, I guess sub noticeable. Those have a lot of hard work there. So
they're just tracking the trajectory of 3 balls at the same time and using their 2 hands to keep them in the air and make sure that they maintain those trajectories at just the right rhythm. It's easy.
Right. All right.
Well, I think that covers these two. Yes. Did you guys have anything to add?
I think that was pretty thorough.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay. For next time, we are covering the posts My Wild and Reckless Youth and Failing to Learn from History.
Spoiler alert, My Wild and Reckless Youth is not nearly as sordid as it sounds.
I don't know. Depends how you feel about epistemic hygiene.
I like the one after the other, too. Go on.
I was going to say, speaking of epistemic hygiene, that's actually a decent tie-in to part of tonight's episode.
Oh, yes, it is. I have a thought that I have now as a quick lead-in into this episode whenever I see a cop that has pulled someone over on the side of the road. It's this joke that I heard, and honestly, you guys are going to have to tell me if maybe I should not include this in the episode, like edit it out or something.
If it's like the expensive cops do it.
Well, it is, but I think it may be in even too poor taste for that. So the joke is that the modern-day trolley problem is you're driving along, and you see that a cop has pulled someone over on the side of the road. They're standing by their window. And do you just keep driving and let something potentially horrible happen, or do you swerve and hit the cop with your car and potentially save dozens of lives?
That's fucked up. Leave it in.
Okay. Steven?
I think it's too ridiculous to be considered, like, a bad thing.
It's a dead babies joke. It's, like, obviously, I don't know. I just used the word obviously, and now I'm like, I need to get rid of words from my vocabulary again. But
well, like you said, it's a dead baby joke in the sense there's no way anyone would actually ever do that. I mean, the cops' dash cam on their car is on. They would see you hitting them, even if you were seriously considering the idea of murdering somebody, right?
Very well.
No, I think that also, like, a lot of people are mad at cops right now. The cops know.
I think
like, some of them know, some of them are very in denial about the fact that, like, yeah, we did kind of fuck up a bit here. Now lots of people are mad at us. And I feel like it's almost a sort of little justified poke. Like, a cop themselves might make that sort of joke, kind of cringe at the joke. Like, yeah, like, now I know that we have this issue.
I think that is the most cop-sensitive way to say what you just said. That they're like, oh, yeah, man, I guess we kind of fucked up, huh? I was like, wow, I've never seen anyone put it so gently.
Yeah.
So yeah, what we are talking about now is going to be the cop and cop brutality and Black Lives Matter movement thing, which was somebody on our Discord mentioned Sam Harris's podcast, which I had heard just I think the day before this was brought up in our podcast or in our Discord, but it's what kicked this off, and it is, I guess, what we're going to be talking about today. And by I guess, I mean I pushed for it, so yeah, this is my fault. But I figured it's something that should probably be addressed. Sam Harris in his podcast brings up the fact that the crime rate in black neighborhoods and, as he puts it, like among the black populace, is in fact quite a bit higher than in white neighborhoods, which are mostly full of white people. And so even though cops kill roughly an equal amount of black and white people, slightly higher on the white people, but as everyone keeps pointing out, that is drastically disproportionate because there's 6 times as many white people than there are black people in the U.S. But then, as is pointed out by many sources now, including Sam Harris's podcast, there is roughly 6 times the amount of crime in black neighborhoods than there is in white neighborhoods. So this is not necessarily an overrepresentation of police presence in black neighborhoods, if one would assume that the thing you would want a good police commissioner to do is put more cops in high crime areas and not put as many ones in low crime areas, because obviously that was a waste of resources if you do that. Thus the contention being that this may not be about racism at all. This is more about using your resources in the appropriate way based on what the crime rates in different areas are. Before I continue, was there anything did either of you guys want to say anything about this?
Yeah, I thought that we were talking about something a bit adjacent to this, because, I mean, Harris talks about that in his episode, which he did put up some links and cites his sources a few days after that episode aired. So if anyone's curious, they can listen to that episode and then check out the website for that and follow the data that he failed to cite when he was doing the podcast. I thought we were talking about the discussion on Discord that was mainly around the...
was it the efficacy of the Black Lives Matter movement, or
slogan in particular?
Yes.
That the contention was from one of our Discord members, that it seems like it's epistemically disingenuous for them to say, for like the banner behind Black Lives Matter to be, stop killing us, or, stop overwhelmingly killing us, or unfairly, whatever it was. And I thought this was a really fun, I think the conversation went on for about a day and then went off and then came back on for another day. And I thought it ended really well in a nice understanding. And it was the person who brought this up lives outside the U.S. And while they're right, that shouldn't matter. I think living in the area of, and I mean, not that I live in a high crime area or something. I live in a medium low, I'm guessing.
I live in West Colfax.
Nice. So yeah, you see some stuff.
Oh, I do.
But it's what I was trying to ask him was you've the sense on the ground. Well, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself. My point is, we're talking about, does it make sense for a political movement to have a less than 100% thorough epistemic status on their slogan, or is that misleading and therefore disingenuous / wrong?
Yes, but I thought we couldn't get into that until we started off with this, right?
Yeah, I suppose so.
We can do both.
I mean, we could have left it as vague as possible, but
well, okay.
No, there's no sense in trying to do that. That'd have been really annoying. I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't going to have a conversation about the stuff covered in Harris's podcast. I wanted to talk more about the sense or nonsense of having overly brief messages on your slogans for a political movement.
Yeah.
As a freelance graphics designer who cares about things like this, who has been forced to care about things like this because money, and now I actually find myself getting upset about fonts. It makes a lot of sense for a political movement to have a brief, compelling name or slogan or statement. From a marketing perspective, just you want people to have an emotional pull towards what you're trying to say. So "stop killing us" is a pretty good emotional pull.
Mhm.
It's hard for really anyone to argue, no, kill us more, or that's not a legitimate complaint. I don't think you also could have a long, complicated slogan. It would be hard to fit on a banner. Wouldn't make a good hashtag. People won't remember it. I'm not sure, if there were alternatives proposed.
I think as people who care about having an accurate picture of the world and truth being represented, it should be kind of important as to whether this is a thing that's actually true or not. Like, for example, if the alt-right, sometimes there are some people on the far right who say that there's some kind of white genocide going on. I don't know exactly what their arguments are, and they sound pretty ridiculous from what I've heard, so maybe they are just completely crazy.
The word genocide is weird, but you could argue that, Southern whites are doing pretty bad, rural rural Southern white people in certain areas in particular
I totally
aren't having
agree,
a great
but
time.
yeah, but if someone is saying, stop killing us, there's a white genocide happening, I think the fact that there is not a white genocide happening is actually relevant to the issue.
But if you're talking about, say, the opioid epidemic, and there was some kind of movement that was "stop drugging us," it wouldn't be exactly correct, but I feel like it's hard to get an entire correct statement in one quick phrase or hashtag or banner anyway. And
I think
I don't know. I can see the utility of the slogan. That's what I'm trying to say from the perspective of it being strategic.
No, I understand. As a white person, I see the utility of opposing white genocide because I do not want to be murdered. But that is why an organization that claims there is white genocide, I think it would be in everyone's interests to know that there isn't an actual white genocide happening, right? The truth matters. That's one of
the truth does matter, but did Sam Harris disprove Black Lives Matter's claims, or did I didn't read. I didn't listen to the podcast episode, but
Well, no, because he made this point, but the fact that that the amount of black people killed is sort of proportional with crime rates in black neighborhoods is sort of besides the point. It's about general police brutality overall, and the fact that that one particular number may be in proportion doesn't really capture the actual statistical facts of how police treat minority communities, which is really badly, but it does capture the emotional aspect behind that.
Yeah, you're saying that was what Harris said, or
No. What Harris said.
That's how the conversation went.
That was basically how the conversation ended up. Yeah, basically, even though the actual, and we should probably cover the Simpson paradox here, if we want to actually get into why the numbers are what they are. The metric of black people killed may match the greater crime rate in black neighborhoods, but the fact remains that the black neighborhoods are over-policed in terms of the police targeting black people far out of proportion to how much they should be targeted, harassing them a lot, extracting a lot of money out of those communities through fines and fees in order to fund themselves, and continuing to militarize and make their presence, more and more onerous for people, while not actually helping reduce the crime rate very much. So it is a burden. It is unfairly placed on black communities. And quite honestly, the police need to be fucking reformed for all communities as it is anyway, because police brutality is a problem for everyone. So for a number of reasons, Harris isn't actually correct on this, but the slogan that they use doesn't quite capture that.
Would, I don't know, a better slogan be stop the cops or.
I don't. I mean, if you want to motivate people, there is no better slogan than "Stop killing us," right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Also, like, as a white person, I also am. It doesn't feel like Black Lives Matter excludes me.
Right.
It was a movement started by Black people because they're upset about being killed all the time.
Yeah.
The other things that you mentioned.
Yes, but it was pointed out that the over policing in black neighborhoods is crazy. Black people are pulled over far more than white people and have their cops searched far more, much more than the demographics of a neighborhood would suggest. And importantly, the cops, when they stop and frisk black people, they find drugs and weapons at a far lower rate than they do on white people, which means that they are basically stopping a whole lot of black people and harassing them for no reason because of this prejudice. So they are not even correctly implementing their heuristics of who's more likely to commit crime because they are getting more negatives off black people. All sorts of bad things with what they've been doing.
Yeah, and that's what I eventually brought in because it's hard to find statistics on like easily calculatable, who's pulled over the most across the country. I'm sure those are out there, but I knew that some of the most salient and obvious statistics came from the stop and frisk in New York. So anyone can Google those and find them. It's the first thing that comes up when you Google stop and frisk.
Can I say something about that when you're done?
Yeah, of course. But it was like I just cut and paste the numbers, then a link to the article, and it was, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it was something like tens of thousands of more people. I think these were in the hundreds of thousands a year. So whatever it was many times more black and Latino people were pulled over, or rather stopped and frisked by the police, and weapons/drugs were found at a slightly lower rate than among the stopped white population. And if this didn't show a bias that wasn't even playing into the favor of stopping crime, this clearly showed a bias on the part of the police. And it was this fun moment during the conversation where it's like, well, hold on. I would expect then to see like numbers that would show disproportionate stopping of minority people or something. And I was like, dude, look at the numbers from that. And he's like, well, hold on, wait. And they found less? And I was like, yes, that's what these other numbers mean. And they're just like, well, that's fucked up. Why aren't people protesting that? And it's like, bro, that's what they're out there protesting.
that's
However, in his defense, that's not what's on the banners. But it was just a nice like kind of getting to watch a light bulb go on in someone's head. It's almost as fun as getting to watch one go off in your own head.
Stephen had been talking about the stop and frisk or statistics on who they pull over more. This reminds me, I was actually talking to a friend about cops a little while ago because I had a weird experience with a really friendly cop who pulled me over. On the East Coast, cops are way, like, I don't know, my experiences with cops is just all negative. They're, like, super mean and gruff and have no sense of humor, and I'm always like, oh my god, okay, cops pulling me over, I better make sure not to move my hands off the wheel, and, and, like, but this guy comes over and he's like, hey, I just noticed that your plates are expired, and I know the DMV is closed right now. Things are really hard with COVID. Here's my card. Give me a call if you have any trouble with this. But I'm just pulling people over to let them know the DMV is actually taking appointments, and you can go on their way. And I was just like having this weird like mental implosion where I was like, is this a police officer? What is happening? But so I was talking about this experience with someone who's lived here longer than me, and they were like, oh yeah, I have maybe about 50% of my experiences here with cops are like that. Because I was like, is it always like that? And they're like, but there's this other thing that happens where they just like ride up your ass on the road. Like you won't see them and you'll just be driving along doing the speed limit, and suddenly a cop's going like 120, they're on your butt and they're trying to like get you to make a mistake so they can arrest you or something. And I was just like thinking, well, I don't know, I feel like maybe they're just, I mean, yeah, that's definitely like, I don't love the fact that they're speeding around in their bullet cars for reasons, but I was like, well, maybe they're just trying to get you to like move over so they can go in the passing lane, like they're just, and it's like, nope, there was like I was in the right lane. I was doing the correct speed limit.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's weird behavior. And then I was like, wait, if they put their lights and sirens on, they have to call it in, right? But if they don't, do they? Because I've had cops do this before too, and it's kind of baffling behavior. It does feel like they're just trying to harass you or freak you out. And I don't know if this is true, and I don't know if either of you know this. Maybe if they don't put their lights and sirens on, but you pull over anyway, and then they like search your car and find drugs or something, like then they can call it in, right? But
I think
if they don't
turning on
put their
the-
lights and sirens on, that means that they didn't call it in, right? So they can't use that as a negative. Like, it doesn't look like they're pulling a bunch of people over at random if it's not on the record.
I think that the lights and sirens directly turn on the camera on the car, and I don't think they have to call in every time they turn their lights and sirens on.
Or at least something about it being on the record. I don't know. Again, this may just be me concocting some conspiracy theory.
I think the record is that it definitely turns on the dash cam for the car, but this might have been a few years ago statistic back when they couldn't just leave them on all the time. I would be surprised. I take that back. I wouldn't be surprised, but I would be disappointed if their cameras weren't on all the time in the hood of the car. It's really easy to, for $100, anyone can get forward and backward cameras on their own car and have those cameras recording all the time. And so I'd be kind of annoyed if our police vehicles weren't outfitted with, Muggle technology that was really easily accessible. That said, I think that it would be weird and stupid to pull somebody over on the highway, especially, well, really at any time, but especially, after dark, with your lights off, because that's a great way to get hit. And that's one of the main reasons that the lights are on and flash both ways. It's a signal to traffic coming up behind the stopped vehicle. By the way, there's a cop car up here. Don't hit the car that stopped on the side of the road or the people standing next to it.
Unless you are pulling the lever in the trolley problem.
Right. Which is I guess that even that joke, I never, it strikes me as much less, of a head scratcher than a real trolley problem.
Yes.
But, and it's interesting. You mentioned, an encounter with a nice police officer, and this is something that I've changed my mind about over the last couple of years. I can't remember, maybe it was during one of the last protests a couple of years ago or something, but I remember Eneasz was on the no, cops are all bad, and I was on this side of no, some cops are bad. And I've had an update over the having analyzed this issue with people and having nothing to do while sitting at home for the last 3,000 years during this pandemic. And I am now fully on board with even if you're a good cop, the system itself is too fucked up for good cops to really do much.
Yeah.
So yes, any individual encounter you might have may or may not be with a nice police officer, but they're part of a system that is overwhelmingly negative.
Yeah.
And also
well, okay. I was going to say, yeah, good cops do exist, and it's great that there are some, but the institution as a whole protects all cops very strongly, which makes it a great place for evil people to go, because they can do whatever they want, and they know they'll be protected, and so more and more evil people go there, more and more good people can't stomach to be there anymore, and the whole thing rots.
Well, and the good people get forced out.
Yes.
You make complaints about, hey, I watched this officer brutalize somebody, and they will, they'll haze you, they'll give you shitty shifts, they'll give you a region 2 hours away from your house to give you a 4-hour round way commute.
Or you just have to watch George Floyd get knelt on for 9 minutes until he suffocates.
Yeah.
Or wait, that was George Floyd was the.
No, that was George Floyd.
That was George Floyd.
Yeah.
That reminds me, we should definitely put in the show notes Dave Chappelle's 30-minute special. I think it's on Netflix, but if not, it's also on YouTube. It's not really funny, so that hold your laughter there, Jace. It's mainly a response to all this, and I thought it was really well done. And I mean, I have cried watching comedy shows before because they deliver some heavily emotional beats. But, Rachel and I watched this, and where I guess I wasn't watching her face, but, I'm assuming she was too. But I mean, I'm crying, and then it ends, and I'm looking at her and I was like, well, that was really great. Like, it was a really beautifully constructed kind of monologue on this that, I don't know, like, I think in the special he mentions that he didn't watch the George Floyd video for at least a few days. I'm happy to say not happy to say, let me rephrase that. I won't hesitate to say that I have not yet watched it, and I probably won't. I don't think I have the stomach for it. And I know it's terrible. I know it would wreck my day. And I think it's kind of just like, you know, people who know that their food is made in terrible conditions but don't want to Google pictures of factory farms. I think it's the same sort of reaction keeping me away from this. But I'm just happy to be like already at the conclusion that I need to be after watching it. Like, I don't think I'd get much more out of watching it other than sad, because I don't
like,
need persuading.
I'm mad enough already. Yeah, like it's not going to make me more upset.
Yeah,
well,
I'm mad and
but...
sad enough already that I don't need more motivation. But he mentions that he watched it. I think what was it, 8 minutes and 47 seconds or something.
Mm-hmm.
He says that was the time on my birth certificate. And Dave Chappelle brings a lot of this home in really great ways. You know, I know that he hits some beats with parts of his humor over the last few years that aren't awesome, but
he said some kind of transphobic shit. I still like him.
Yeah,
I like his other
I mean,
stuff.
and like it's kind of like he said transphobic shit. I won't get derailed on that, but it's like I think that this is perfectly palatable to everybody who, you know, whether or not you agree with 100% of his humor all the time or not.
I don't agree with the idea.
This isn't really a comedy special.
Right. That's why I was laughing when you mentioned it, because I was just laughing at the fact that you called it a comedy special. I guess it was titled that, but yeah. But no, I don't agree with the idea, you know, that of people being problematic the way that they would, you know, use in some leftist circles. This person's problematic. Throw out everything they've ever created, and nothing they've said is valid, and it's just, he can have shitty opinions about trans people, but great opinions about Black Lives Matter and all kinds of other things, and I don't know why, I don't know. Like, it's like, I wonder if people think that, like, if they watch Dave Chappelle, like, talk about Black Lives Matter, they're going to start becoming transphobic just by osmosis or something. Like, you're allowed to have your own opinions, and you can...
No, man, that's how opinions work. You listen to someone and they become your opinions now.
I guess.
I haven't broadcasted this special to enough people because I haven't, like, posted on my work Slack channel or anything, because it's not 100% the kind of thing that you share with work.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, I haven't gotten feedback from people who, like, oh, I won't watch it because I don't like Dave Chappelle. I'm not sure if that's a reaction people get or not. So
I might have said that a few years ago, but...
I'll also say that I think problematic is one of those words like complexity that I have no idea what the fuck it means. I take that back. I have some idea what the fuck it means.
They have cooties.
I'm pretty sure that the person using the word problematic has no idea what they're talking. I mean, they have not articulated the point they're making.
Yeah.
They get to just use this lazy catch-all problematic to say this person said something I disagree with or whatever, right?
It's their way of saying boo. Boo this person. They're problematic. Rawr.
They've got a black mark on their record.
Yeah. So, Jace, you mentioned that the thing about the cop, like just pulling up right behind someone and tailing them, trying to get them to do something wrong. That is one of the major problems in all this, is that cops, basically, no one can go a day without breaking some sort of law. And maybe that's exaggerating a bit, but because there's a book called 3 Felonies a Day, which I think is an exaggeration. But
is that like the statistic where like you ate several hundred spiders in a year?
Well, yeah. There's
is
a book
there a
with that
spiders
actual
George
name.
of felonies? Anyway.
No, but with how many laws there are in our society, it is nearly impossible for anyone to simply live a normal life and not break some sort of law on at least a monthly basis. And in particular, traffic infractions, while they're not felonies, are so ubiquitous that a lot of cops have a sort of game where they say, let's just follow any random person until we can pull them over, and it's impossible to not get pulled over within the space of 5 minutes or so, because there's just so many
If
things.
they're 3 inches away from your bumper and
Yeah.
like you're doing the speed limit, that's really intimidating, and you're going to freak out and probably like turn without signaling. Yeah, slam your brakes on. I don't know. I used to drive an ambulance. People freak out when they see an ambulance coming and don't know what to do. It's kind of a problem, especially like you want people to actually just get out of the ambulance's way, but with cops, they want you to fuck up so they can give you a ticket.
Yeah. I mean, that's part of the thing. Like, basically everyone is guilty at all times, so cops can at any time pull over anyone they want, which is just a ridiculous thing in our society. We should not have this whole everyone is guilty at all times so that the authorities
stop and
basically
frisk.
the authorities basically choose
warrant.
who they want to target because everyone's guilty. And one of my more fun statistics that we picked up over the course of this Discord discussion was that the worse visibility is, the less frequently black people are pulled over. Like, on really bright sunny days, black people get pulled over a lot. When it's like raining, it drops, and like during the night, it drops a lot, just because the cops can't see who the people are, so they can't target black people as much. It's pretty fucked up. But I think that
my
was
understanding was... Oh, you weren't done. Go ahead.
Oh, well, this last thing was what kind of brought the Discord commenter over when they realized that in America, everyone is guilty at all times, and the cops can randomly use force on whoever they want for no particular reason. And they're like, that's basically you're living in a tyranny. Why aren't people protesting this? And that is when everyone slapped their forehead and was like, what do you think we're doing?
Well, and this kind of brings it back to the central point. Like, what they thought we were doing because of the signs was saying, black people are killed by the police disproportionately.
Yeah.
And so they read the signs they weren't here watching the protests. And so they're like, well, hold on. That doesn't seem to actually be the thing. What are they actually complaining about? Or that's not quite charitable. They were saying like that, it's not clear to me that their central argument is frankly true.
Yeah.
And so what it amounts to is that while the messages that fit on signs to carry at a rally or that fit in hashtags are overly brief, the broad message that you get, if you go to their website, if you go to blacklivesmatter.com and hit the about page, it doesn't say anything like, so it uses language like we want to protect. I should just pull it up, but I hate typing while we're recording. It uses language that is about as succinct as it can be. I think the about could probably fit in a tweet, but it's definitely too long to fit on a sign to carry at City Hall, and so I guess I just need to. Well, two quick things. One, I'm not 100% cognitively present for this recording. It's been a crazy long day, and we're recording later than we've ever recorded. So if I'm a little jumbled, that's why. But I'm also I need to be perfectly clear before the opportunity slips by. I'm 100% in favor of the protests and of the Black Lives Matter movement. Any discussion about the epistemic solidity. Whether or not the slogan on the signs or whatever is epistemically sound, this is more just like a discussion abstracted about that sort of phenomena. I used the example during the Discord conversation of like bumper stickers endorsing a political candidate. So I told you I was tired. What I'm trying to say is that I'm 100% in favor of the movement and everything that they're doing and that they're arguing for. We're having an abstract conversation about like, when is it okay to be, I don't know, less than 100%, like I said, epistemically sound in your soundbite arguments? And I think that this is... Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I agree with you 100% on being on the side of we need these police reforms. Everything that Black Lives Matter is pushing for is stuff that needs to be done, and oh my God, thank God someone is finally doing it. So, absolutely with them. On the other hand, you said, like, maybe their slogan isn't 100% accurate as if it was like a minor thing, but from my understanding, like most people get the impression, and even like if I didn't already know what the issue was, if I was from a foreign country and I was going into this cold, I would have the very distinct impression that the issue is that a militarized, racist police force is targeting and murdering black people because they are racist. Is that not the impression that you think one would fairly get from the movement?
I think that is the impression one would fairly get from the movement.
And that's completely not true, right?
That leads to the core contention here. Like, I'm okay with the message that you get from the quick soundbite without doing any digging in. You know, so if all you see is news coverage of the protests and you see the signs, I'm okay with the message that people get from that being a little inaccurate because I agree with all of their goals. And I realize that that's a slippery spot to be in, but I sort of am okay with that.
Are you okay with anyone on the alt-right at all pointing out that what I just stated before is literally factually false, and therefore anyone who reads that refutation will then say Black Lives Matter is a bunch of liars, why are people supporting them?
I mean, there's nothing that they could possibly say that would convince the alt-righters.
Sure, but what about people who are in the middle?
What you said, it sounded like you said we are protesting against the fact that a militarized police force is killing black people disproportionately, or because they are racist, they are targeting black people more.
Yes, there's a racist force out there that is murdering black people.
Is that wrong?
I think it's an
oversimplification for sure, but I mean,
I think it's an oversimplification to the point where, on the face of it, it's wrong.
Can you explain more?
They aren't death squads created to weed out black people, and not even created. They have not become death squads that try to weed out black people, even though the result of their absolutely corrupt system that protects what used to be pedophile priests and now is murderous cops, and needs massive reform and does end up making the lives of black people dangerous and scary and really drastically negatively impacts black communities much more and makes their lives more dangerous. All that is true, but saying, there's this racist government organization murdering black people is so far from that.
Word, though?
That's the impression that you certainly get. I think that is a fair interpretation of an outsider who didn't know how things actually are on the ground, what they would think. Or just someone in middle America who doesn't watch the news very often and doesn't know a lot of black people.
What I want to know is it like the impetus of the person who is being oppressed to make sure they are doing science and posting statistics and big numbers on their signs while they're doing their protests? Or I think just the way politics are done is that people will oversimplify and come up with a catchy slogan for a much deeper concept, a much deeper issue that has all of these other...
Right, and
because basically what you were saying was, this is a thing that sucks. It's a bad system that does disproportionately affect black people, and that's kind of, I think, the impression I've got is that was what people are saying. I mean, maybe in much more emotionally charged words, but I don't disagree with that.
On the one hand, I do agree, because I believe Zvi has this great post called You Have 5 Words that says anytime you want to reach more than 1,000 people, maybe more than 10,000, but the more people you try to reach, the less words you have to do it in. And he says if you're trying to address the nation, you have 5 words. That's it. Trump succeeded because he only needed 4. Make America great again. Or in some cases 3, build the wall, right? You can
lock her up.
Yeah. You can never have a complex message. So on the one hand, yes, absolutely, you have to be simple. And also, it's really fucking hard to motivate people. And so focusing on the deaths, lots of times it takes someone being murdered to affect any change.
And then it's also the salient issue, too, the deaths.
Yeah. And while I agree with you on all that, for the practical purposes, that's why we're doing this, right? To affect change. But I think one of the problems is that for the practical purposes, anyone who can turn around and say, look what they're saying, it's obvious bullshit, right? That also really hurts the cause.
I don't think what they're saying is obvious bullshit. unless I maybe have been out of the loop, if people have been like, if people representing the movement have been like going up at a podium and going on TV claiming that like that making up statistics or charts or lying about what is actually happening, but I don't think that they are. They're talking about people who have been killed, like George Floyd. They're talking about like events that have happened.
If your 5 words are racist police murder black people, that's...
Is that what they're saying?
I'm just saying, is that your 5 words? Because, like, stop killing us, I guess, is their 3 words, which works,
Or Black Lives Matter, which
or Black
I
Lives
think is
Matter,
hard to
sure.
disagree with. Also,
Yes.
Stop killing us and Black Lives Matter are just like, I think, as slogans go, pretty, like, you'd have to be sort of a monster to disagree with those.
Right.
But they don't imply any sort of...
That's how good slogans work.
They certainly imply, like as I was saying, that the impression most people get or seem to get is the one I stated before, unless I'm wrong about that. Like, do you not get that impression from their public face?
I don't, because I am more like already here and I'm informed about this. Maybe I could see the possibility that an outsider, someone from another country or whatever, coming in and looking at the press, but then I start to wonder about, is it just the media too, because is it what the Black Lives Matter representatives are saying that's giving them that impression, or is it the way it's being reported on, the sensationalist media? Like, I'm playing a little bit of devil's advocate here, but like, I don't just want to have this be a podcast where all 3 of us agree with each other enthusiastically, because that's not good air.
Yeah.
Well, we're not. I'm ready. I can push back on the questions you're raising, Inyash. So, like, I am, like Jace, unable to put myself in a position where I don't know what their actual message is. So I can't quite say what my interpretation would be if I just, got back from the ISS without internet for the last 18 months and then, saw a bunch of headlines or something. So, like, but I'm willing to even grant, like, okay, let's say that the general population is getting the wrong message. Like you said, the alt-righters will take the ammunition and go nuts with it, but they'll do that literally no matter what. So I don't think that the goal should be make your message palatable enough to persuade the alt-righters who are already inclined to disagree with you no matter what. I think that it should be, let's try and get attention and get shit done. And so I will grant, for the sake of argument, let's say that, yes, it's giving a possibly, or no, not a possibly, that's a dodge. It's giving a less than accurate depiction of reality in order to accomplish their goals. Like, in general, that's really, I think, like we mentioned, how slogans have to be. And if we could pick an example that we all disagree with, the anti-abortionists, stop killing our babies is what's on their signs, right? And so that's catchy. It shares a lot of the same problems and a lot of the same strengths. But the problem is, or the difference is, that I disagree with their goal. I do agree with the Black Lives Matter goal. So if their sign says Black Lives Matter or stop killing us, I'm kind of fine with it delivering a message to the uninitiated's head that isn't exactly a perfect map to reality, because it's achieving goals I care about. I realize this isn't a generalizable philosophy, but I'm just prepared to bite the bullet on that. This is a, like, you had that throwaway line about like pedophile priests or something. If there was a big movement to strip the Catholic Church of a lot of its like powers and liberties that it's abused for ages, and it's used those to become fabulously wealthy and to abuse children. If people are marching in the streets saying stop raping our kids, it would be kind of disingenuous, because most people's kids aren't being raped, but they're using that as a shorthand to point a big neon light at the Catholic Church and saying, everyone look at this.
Yeah, kids are being raped. It doesn't like imply a number, and I think that the implication there is like any is too many.
And yeah, so certainly in that case, yeah, and probably in any case, like either of the ones that we talked about, right? So I guess there's that, and I would also just put out the legitimate question of like, what is the alternative if you're going to have a rally or a march or something to garner attention? short of carrying a sign with a QR code that people can scan to go to your website, is there an alternative other than having a slogan that can't perfectly capture the essence of your argument?
I'm looking at the George Floyd protest pictures, and front and center there's a sign that just says, "I can't breathe." And another one, Am I next?" Those are good signs.
Yeah.
Well, but the first one's wrong because they can breathe. Sorry, I'm being an asshole on purpose. So, like,
No,
but that's my point. It captures the emotion, and it's doing it to an end that I think everybody who's not an alt-right police dictator fascist lover can get behind, right? And I realize I just painted people who disagree with me into a corner, so let me walk that back. But does that make sense?
It does, but I think that's my main problem. Like, I don't really care about getting the police, fillators, alt-right people on our side anyway, because they never will be. I'm more worried about the people in the middle who see that's something that they are not being told the truth to, or that they get that impression, I guess. And that it's the people in the middle that I am more worried about. Because, they're the ones that are going to decide to go with one side or the other, and I would like them to go with our side.
Are you concerned that they will see a sign and then do their own independent research and do some facts and figuring with numbers and determine that the sign was misleading and therefore throw the cause out?
No, I'm concerned that they'll hear someone say that black people are killed at about the same numbers as white people, which is a rate that's 6 times higher than white people. But since black neighborhoods have crime rates at about 6 times higher, this is justified, and they will be like, "Oh, what's going on here? Why all these protests if resources are being used correctly?"
I mean, and so one of the things too that came out of the Discord is the number of police encounters per lifetime.
Yes.
And we, there's not, at least during the, I also have these conversations while I'm doing my day job. So I can't spend an hour doing research. So I didn't find anything to give good numbers on this, but I'm prepared to guess that, with a high level of confidence to the sake of let's say $100, if anyone wants to give me, some right or wrong on this, that black people on average are stopped more by the police than white people. And that's going to be true across every neighborhood.
No, here's the thing: is
so,
I'm on Black Lives Matter side. I'm on your side. I want this movement to succeed.
So, I think that given the number of police encounters go up, your odds of being killed by the police go up, because you don't die in a police encounter. You don't die at the hands of the police without encountering them. And so, if you're stopped 500 times and the rates of being killed are only 1 in 10,000 or something, your odds of being killed are much higher if you're stopped 500 times than if you're stopped 5 times. Depending on where you live and what kind of lifestyle you lead. I don't remember the last time I had an altercation with a police officer. Maybe once in the last 5 years. And so, if I was stopped 3 or 4 times a week on my way to and from work.
Yeah.
So the one time where you show impatience, or they get you out of their car to fuel you up, and you kind of and you show
the whole Sandra Bland thing again too, with the talking to strangers. That was the whole sort of premise of that book.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'm glad it ties in. I was going to say just the one time that you show annoyance, and this is one of the things that I drew contention with Harris's podcast, because he's mentioned this before, and he's correct, but it's so easy to be correct when this isn't a problem that you really have. So what he's correct about is that if you're stopped by the police, what you should do is cooperate with everything that they're saying. Now, as lots of videos over the last few years have shown, that often gets you, or that doesn't always guarantee that you won't be shot to death on the sidewalk. But, if you're pulled over and you did nothing wrong, what you should do anyway is have your license and registration ready when they come to the window, have your car off, have your keys on the dash, do all the things they taught you in driver safety or somebody should have taught you. Or, if no one taught you, Google what to do when I get pulled over and just do those things. But, again, you have the car off, the window down, and you just do what they say and, live with the fact that you're being stopped for no reason. That's what Harris says to do. And then if you're detained and you're arrested for nothing that you did, you don't resist. You come back the next day with your lawyer, as if everyone can do that. again, that's really easy to say from Harris's perspective, and it's true if your odds of this happening to you are very low. But again, if you're the guy that gets stopped every other day on the way to or from work, and it's like, okay, I'm getting stopped again. This is literally, 3 hours out of my week that I'm being spent groped by the cops. This one time I'm going to tell him to fuck off and keep going to work. Then he's going to tackle you and arrest you, and then you're going to be,
dead. Or your career's ruined forever. And I think that's exactly what I was trying to get at. That like the movement makes it sound like the answer to this problem is to remove racist monsters from the murder force. But the problem is drastically different. It's exactly what you said. It's a system that is corrupt and that protects bad people and that can harass anyone at any time for any reason, basically. And those are the things we want to change. So the movement may not even fix the problem if all the people who are pushing it, who join up, get the feeling that what they have to do is fix the problem of murderous racists being in here rather than the system being fucked up and making people's lives miserable in this way.
Is that what they're actually calling for? Again, I'm looking at their website and I see defund the police is the main hashtag here.
The things they're calling for are all awesome and would help quite a lot. It's just the messaging behind it that is less than honest, I guess.
I again just wonder, is this messaging coming from Black Lives Matter? Is it coming from, reporting? And in that case, if I just came from, again, I don't know, outer space, and I heard, oh man, people are having some kind of conflict here, and on one side they're saying, I don't know, stop killing black people, on the other side they're saying end white genocide, I would be like, these both seem like pretty incompatible, exaggerated claims of the sort that I would expect the media to report on. Let me actually Google for 2 seconds to see what they actually are saying. Whether or not they're being, misrepresented or exaggerated or even, it's probably the case that the people in charge of the movement are saying defund the police, do these reform measures, and then, but maybe, some random person on the street waving a sign is going to say something like, cops are racist and the police, but maybe that person gets interviewed. I don't know. That's not, how are you going to stop that as Black Lives Matter? And is that really your top priority?
Well, I get the impression that most people aren't, Googling their actual goals and what they're pushing forward in Congress, and instead
is that Black Lives Matter's fault, though?
Well, no, what they say
are they responsible for fixing the fact that people have the wrong impression?
What I'm saying is what they see is what people are yelling in the protests on the streets, and that is...
You're never going to get people yelling in protests on the street. The statistics show that.
No, but what they are yelling is what people see, and the organizers of the protests have some, or at least some influence over what gets yelled on the streets, right?
I don't agree that they should be spending their time and resources on trying to organize people in such a way that they are all yelling the statistics. I think that that's not the best use of their resources and time. And I just think that this is always going to be human behavior. You have movements that have leaders, and this one I think actually does not have centralized leadership, but maybe that's part of the issue.
Well, somebody put out those policy goals.
Yeah. There are the articulate people who are composing the goals and writing the website, and there are the angry people whose cousin just got shot, marching in the street waving a sign, and that is how protests and things like this are just going to happen. If we could solve this through civil discourse, then that would be ideal, of course, but we're not living in this ideal world, and I just have a hard time holding Black Lives Matter responsible for things that seem like it's not even their fault.
Yeah, there's this great scene in Malcolm X, the movie, where a whole group of black men show up outside of, I think it was a courthouse. I don't remember the exact details, but they are all really pissed off. But they're all dressed kind of similarly, and Malcolm X is out front, and there's sort of a face down with some white authority figures there, and he raises his hand and makes a signal, and all the black men just turn pretty much at the same time and walk away. At first I was like, nothing happened. Why didn't he make something happen? There was an injustice being done. But then I realized, like, he was showing his power. He was like, this group of people behind me are doing what I said. And that was a huge demonstration of power to the people he was speaking with. And I guess that's what you need. You need you need some sort of leadership
you need
that
both.
has, you need a leadership
That's what I think.
that
You
has...
need Malcolm X and you need Martin Luther King.
Well,
someone who will give rousing speeches and someone who will...
No. What I'm saying is you need both the leadership, the Malcolm X, who can talk and make demands and negotiate, and you need the large crowd behind him who is willing to do what he says and also show their displeasure. And so maybe you do need a mob that is riled up by slogans which may be incorrect but are emotionally compelling in order that you have that, base of people who are angry, who have demonstrated they are willing to loot and burn stuff, so that you can negotiate if you have the leadership. And so it doesn't matter entirely what they're yelling, as long as what they're yelling keeps them motivated, right? Am I thinking through this right? Like, I'm literally going through this thought process as we're speaking. It had not occurred to me before.
It sounds like we need a light lord and people who will take his mark.
Yes! Thank you, Stephen! Oh my god.
Thank you for...
And I used gendered language there because that's what Quirrell used during his Christmas speech.
Yeah,
but everything else
I
you
was
were
just going to
saying
say, thank you for lightening the
beats.
mood, Stephen. This is an upsetting topic, but...
Well, and I think it's one that...
we're kind of on the same page. I still disagree with the statement that the signs are factually wrong, because the signs, again, are saying Black Lives Matter, stop killing us, will I be next, I can't breathe. These are not scientific or statistical statements.
Right.
I don't think those are incorrect. I don't think that the impression someone else takes away from what they have seen in all the chaos is really necessarily what Black Lives Matter needs to be worrying about, at least at the top of their priorities list. I also am sort of, like I said, playing devil's advocate, so I obviously think that honest epistemics is good practice. I just don't think that that's usually how human behavior works in these kinds of scenarios, and that's maybe the whole rationalists versus barbarians sequence. I forget if we've even done that one yet. I think it's another one.
No, we haven't gotten there. It's later.
But it's you adapt your strategies for what your goals are, and in this case, they are not trying, or maybe to some extent they're trying to resolve this through diplomatic discourse, but that hasn't been working. You brought up Malcolm X, and I was just thinking, the original American Civil Rights Movement had incredibly articulate, well-organized, non-violent, these were model protests, and yet this shit is still happening in 2020, so I can sort of get on the side of the people who are mad. Okay, it's 2020, oh my god. We've been through this so many times.
Well, to be fair, the problems are different. The ones that they had in the 60s...
they're different, but they're the same.
Yeah.
There's still an element of racism here, and that's another thing that I'm wondering. I think that, obviously racism is not the only problem, or, I don't know, maybe even the main problem, but, with the main problem being more just the militarized, overfunded police that are out of control. But it does affect black people more than most other groups. So, yeah, what's my real opinion? That's what I'm trying to figure out now that I'm kind of taking off the black fedora or whatever. When you're playing devil's advocate, you wear a black fedora, right? I need to, I don't know, the thing is that I have a hard time even talking about some of the other, things that I wanted to bring up, where it's just, I feel like this isn't even my fight. It's definitely a fight that I support, but, I got pulled over by a cop, or I've been pulled over by cops many times, and I've had good and bad experiences, but I've never had, experiences like my Hispanic or black friends have had, where they get dragged out of the car, or, I had a Hispanic friend who was, playing a little keyboard and sitting in his car, waiting to, deliver Christmas presents, and somebody saw him, and it was in a white neighborhood, and they were like, he's casing the house for robbery, called the police. The police show up, drag him out of the car, arrest him, slash all of the seats in the car looking for drugs or whatever, impound the car. It's just And like, I think they found like a tiny amount of weed in the car, which justified them being able to put him in jail and impound his car, and then like, and this is just like not even one of the worst things I've heard. Or
Yeah.
I don't want to get into like too many. And here's my anecdote. There's a pattern to the anecdotes that is concerning, and I also don't know how much I even get to really talk about it as someone who's not like as directly affected as other people I know.
I think that like I understand the contention that the mental model that the blank slate viewer would get from watching the movement is like you said, Inyash, like, oh man, I didn't know that like the KKK ran the police force and that they're out there killing black people left and right and willy nilly.
Yeah.
I do think that depending on what news you watch, that might be the impression you get. I'm with Jace that I don't know if you just, maybe if you even talked to a random attendee of one of these rallies, that might be the impression you get, because maybe they're wrong and they've got an incorrect, poorly calibrated statistical analysis of the situation because they're emotionally charged, or maybe they're deliberately misleading people because they want to get attention to this very worthy cause. So like I get how that's kind of a problem. I think, this is kind of a fun conversation because we're all kind of emotionally charged, or at least I don't know if anyone knows this about listening to me on the show. I rarely get emotionally charged about anything, so for me to have an emotion is nice and refreshing because I'm dead inside.
My mind is killed right now.
But I don't think it's wrong to have an emotional reaction to it. If I was so emotional that I was unwilling to engage in discussion or to
we're not
see
straw
my people
Vulcans here on the
right,
Bayesian conspiracy.
or if I or if I couldn't see the people I'm disagreeing with as people or something, if I was that far angry, then I would have a problem. But I think it's right and proper to be mad when, so if the rallying cry is, stop killing us, then the response, and this is actually a quote from, we'll post this in the show notes, Eliezer Yudkowsky wrote a Medium article called A Comprehensive Reboot of Law Enforcement. And
of course he did. I haven't seen that either.
If you haven't read it, it's really good.
I'm sure it's excellent. I'm just laughing.
Yeah,
Eliezer.
It's a 23 point argument, or not argument, but 23 list items for the agenda of helping solve this problem. And it's not that long of a read. I recommend everyone check it out. If you want to get into some of the longer-winded parts of it, there's a second link at the bottom. And he elaborates on one of his points, which was a zero tolerance for deaths of unarmed persons caused by interactions with law enforcement. And this is what I really enjoy about like philosophical debate books or essays or whatever, is that it's a taught practice that you are to anticipate your opponent's responses to your arguments and respond to them in advance. And so anyway, I will just read the one paragraph here that I really like from this. He says, I am fundamentally on the side of any faction, group, or just plain people whose only request is, please stop killing us. If the response is, but we aren't killing most of you most of the time, statistically speaking, I also support their further request, please kill us even less often. Or, please kill us so infrequently that we no longer feel afraid. If this requires an extremely low frequency of killing or harsh public penalties for killing them, so be it. And that is, I think, a really great way to put this. Like, it also has the downside of being too long to put on a sign. Maybe you could fit "please kill us so infrequently that we no longer feel afraid" on a sign. That actually might work if you have a big sign. It doesn't drive the point home for emotional salience to the people taking pictures of the crowd or something, or seeing pictures of the crowd, that is. But that one sentence, I think, encapsulates the marches when they're talking about fear, the deaths specifically involved, right? It's not that, like, I don't know, everybody knows somebody who's been killed by the cops. There simply aren't enough police murders for that to be true. Again, please kill us so infrequently that we no longer feel afraid. I've mentioned this before. I think I when I'm in the right headspace, I can get very empathetic to the point where Paul Bloom would be able to say that's probably a problem.
Yeah.
But like I can very easily put myself in the situation, and I know that I'm under imagining it, and it still puts me in a properly terrified headspace, and that really drives this point home for me. If I'm black and I get pulled over, I don't know what the fuck's going to happen with the rest of my day or the rest of my fucking life. And that is terrifying. And again, if I can get there as a white guy who never sees the cops, it probably helps that I literally never go outside. I think I filled up my gas tank for the first time since January last weekend. So my ability to be interacted with is less. But the actual fear that lives with people, and just as it is, disproportionately people of color, that's the core complaint of the community. I know that it sounds like I'm arguing with somebody who's not like someone who's not here, because that's not your correct me if I'm wrong, Enosh, but you're not challenging that.
No.
you're exactly. So I don't know why this is what happens when I get emotionally charged. I make points that
You start fighting an imaginary opponent. Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
I do that in my head all the time. It's such an obnoxious habit.
I try to catch myself when I notice that I'm doing that in my head, but depending on the kind of day I'm having, I'm more or less successful with it. So I guess that's what they're saying, but I because I agree with that, and I can't think of a more succinct way to put it on a sign and march in a group. And so like that's the thing is like if there was another way to do it, again, a QR code that they could carry around on the sign, that actually might work. And it goes to a well thought out, it only needs to be a few paragraphs. You know, it doesn't need to be a book to really drive the point home. But if you're there trying to get quoted for a headline, you know, what do you say that is 100% factually true and actually gets people's attention? Can we solve that problem?
I don't know. So maybe I'm just not paying enough attention, but how is it that everyone has this impression of what Black Lives Matter is about, including myself? That is...
Yeah, who's everyone, by the way? Like, where are you pulling this from? Is it just
Enosh,
the person from
typical mind.
this person on Discord? Like, because I have not... I don't get the impression that this is...
I have, I don't know, wide, I guess, social contacts. I don't even want to say friends necessarily. Some of them are friends. I know a lot of different people all over in various places, and those of them who are not very in touch with the movement at all definitely seem to have this impression. And I don't know if it's from what they've read in news articles or if they've heard people speaking at rallies or where it's coming from, but that seems to be the impression that people outside of any specific movement have.
Okay, can I, this might fall totally flat, but my brain just made this association. I don't actually know what J.K. Rowling said that was supposedly transphobic. And
Jay's just revealed that he doesn't listen to the Mind Killers podcast.
I am not caught up on any podcasts right now, and it's really upsetting. But the thing is that I got the impression that she said something horrible, and now she is a bad with a capital B, or problematic.
Exactly.
And the thing is, but I know, and I think people generally are starting to become more savvy to this, that like the media, all news outlets are just like outrage maximizers, or just, well, actually click maximizers. I expect everything to be exaggerated to the point of ridiculousness. When I see anything in the news, I like, okay, yeah, let's, sure, I'll read up on that later and see. Or like in the case of J.K. Rowling, I'm like, I don't fucking care. As a trans person, I do not give a shit if J.K. Rowling is transphobic. And like, probably she said something that like my parents, who are like pretty uninformed but well-meaning-ish, might say, and I would just roll my eyes and be like, whatever, like, you don't know enough about this for me to care about your opinion, and I'm not taking that into account anyway. Like, this is off topic now, but I was just kind of drawing the parallel there of when I hear something, when people have generated enough outrage or interest or morbid curiosity about something that's in the news, I like never take it at face value that this is what happened, or like this is the true factual thing.
Yeah, but I got a question for you then. like, if you've heard of this crazy outrage thing that all these people are pissed off about, and you're like, oh my god, probably more clickbait bullshit, nothing that bad actually happened. And then you hear that there is rioting downtown a few blocks from Colfax. Businesses are being burned because of what J.K. Rowling supposedly said, and there's people demanding laws be changed.
That's why I didn't look it up, because I don't. That's not happening.
No, that's not happening. But like, if those things were happening, and you were like, oh my god, all this outrage is over something that isn't actually that outrageous, stop burning things and stop trying to change laws, like, that might be a thing for you, right?
It might, but I think that Black Lives Matter, what is happening is actually quite outrageous, and I do think that they should change the laws. That, like, if I looked into it and I found out that it was J.K. Rowling said some dumb thing my mom might say, I'd be like, okay, then this is quite a disproportionate reaction, and I would probably, like, be against the protests.
Yeah, but what if you looked into it and it turned out that it wasn't the fact that the KKK have taken over the police and are using them as a excuse to murder black people a lot? I mean, no one's saying this, but, like, what is that? If that is the impression that you got, and then you looked into it and that wasn't the case, wouldn't you be, like, less supportive of Black Lives Matter?
No, I would think that people in the news naturally do their thing of exaggeration, but, like, I actually just read the Wikipedia article about the George Floyd protests, and I am quite mad about what has happened.
Yeah.
Another thing that I should probably disclaim is that my two best friends were, in fact, killed by a cop. So I have a horse in the race here, or a appropriate metaphor for being emotionally compromised.
Right. I don't know if that even counts as compromised.
Well, yeah, I'm struggling to find words here, mostly just because it's 1,000,000 degrees. So hot.
So, I don't know if we can put a neat bow on this, but I am going to just go ahead and try and segue a bit, just because we are nearing the I don't know, the last bit of our this section anyway. It seems like the problem more is, like, how do you succinctly illustrate a message this complicated to a crowd that is uninformed? And that, I think that's a hard question to answer. Is that sort of where we're at?
I don't know. I don't ever think that would be what I would try to advocate for. I would be more along the lines of, how do I make the general message be more reflective of reality? Even the 5-word message be something that I could get behind wholeheartedly, so I don't feel like I'm misleading people for good purposes. Because in my opinion, even for the best of purposes, it's not good to mislead people, because once they find out you've misled them, you've lost their allyship.
I mean, so then, I know we're going to go in a bit of a circle, but, like, what is the 5-word message that you disagree with? Like, Black Lives Matter. Like, so it's none of the ones that we've talked about.
No, I don't agree with any of the specific words or any of the slogans I've seen. Just the feeling, and maybe this feeling is entirely something that is due to the news media trying to create outrage, and maybe this is something that we got to take up with the media instead. Then, but the general feeling seems to be somewhat misleading, and I don't think the average middle American would feel like they were given a correct impression of what solutions are being requested.
I think I hear what you're saying, that they'll hear about this problem and they'll be like, oh my god, that's terrible. And in the off chance they do any of their own independent research, they'll say, hold on, that doesn't sound like it actually lines up with what I thought this was saying. Maybe these people are being misleading. Well, that sucks, and they will fall off the wagon of supporting them. Is that the concern?
Yeah, and also that I'm not even concerned they're going to do their own research. I'm concerned that they will be presented by research by the right, because that's going to happen. Like, people aren't going to do their own research, but someone with a horse in the game who wants to keep the police brutal and evil is going to give them this other side, which, while it's also very misrepresentative, shows that the other side was, like, trying to play to their emotions.
I think that both sides are going to be trying to play to people's emotions, and I just don't expect that anyone doesn't know this. I don't know that. Like, then again, I might be typical minding with like everyone knows the media is bullshit.
Yeah. Or maybe I'm
You are
just,
definitely typical minding there.
or maybe I'm just very naive.
I think it's a complicated thing because, like, and then just to wrap this up, I think in the next couple of minutes, because there's one more thing we've got to talk about before I finally go to bed, with or without making a last-ditch stab at installing my microwave. This seems to be a general problem across all political campaigning, and you can't make a quick soundbite, headline, hashtag, etc. that reflects reality, totally gives an accurate map of the territory, because the territory takes more than 5 words to describe. And so I'm trying to think of a not Trump or anything from, I don't even know what Biden's campaign slogan is. Is it not Trump?
Literally just not Trump.
Yeah. So this is, I think, going to just be a problem across anything where you are trying to get anything done politically or through the system. And if that's the case, that this is just a terrain where epistemic. I wish I'd thought of the right word before we recorded, because I keep stammering after this. A full, wholehearted epistemic understanding is available. It might be unavailable across the entire terrain of political campaigning, right? And if that's the case, then that's just the name of the shitty game, and those are the shitty rules. But it's the shitty game that we all have a stake in. And so if you are of the variety who is just kind of needs an epistemically pure life, then anything involving politics just might not be for you. I literally can't think of anything political whatsoever or involving political reform, etc., that can be or that is advocated honestly and very, very quickly.
Yeah.
Anyone got any last thoughts on this?
Fuck the police.
Oh gosh, no, my brain is thoroughly killed at this point.
All right, speaking of things that are killed, this is late to the party because we do a bi-weekly podcast, and this happened 2 days after our last episode. But for anyone who's listening to this who doesn't already know, which I'm guessing is nobody, Slate Star Codex, that wonderful resource of of thoughtful insight and hard discussion on every topic under the sun, is gone. Scott Alexander was approached for an interview with the New York Times, and they never got past the initial questions because one of the first ones was along the lines of, "Can we publish your real name?" And he was like, "No, thank you. I publish under a pseudonym for a reason." And the long and short of it is that he was told that there is a New York Times policy of using people's real names. He said, "Please don't." And they're like, "Well, we're going to." And he's like, "Then I will delete my blog so that you guys have nothing to report on." And they said, "Fine, go ahead." So he did. He did, I mean, in the sense that Scott Alexander deleted his blog. Yeah. I have a lot of thoughts on this. On the one hand, it's really annoying because it's now much harder to link to a Slate Star Codex post. A lot of the vocabulary, Moloch,
the worst argument in the world.
Right. All of those are Googleable and probably have pages on lesswrong.com. So you can share the vocab with somebody, but you can't link easily to the original post. That said, it's the internet. Nothing is gone forever. The Wayback Machine preserved the entire website.
And also Scott wrote, I archived it. I'm not a monster.
Yeah. So in the event that he wants to, that he's comfortable at some point to restore it, he totally can. It's not obliterated. It's just gone. So I don't know. My immediate thought on this was I don't know if that'll do anything, because now the article just comes, links to the Wayback Machine post rather than to slatestarcodex.com.
Wait, will it?
So I'm just saying it could.
I don't think the New York Times
No, they wouldn't.
would do that.
Why not?
Well,
is there some rule?
I've never seen that done before.
Yeah, not unless they were to change the article about why it is they're linking to this and the blog is gone now.
Yeah, they would also have to implicate themselves as, oh yeah, so by the way,
yeah,
we did this. That's
I
not going
guess,
to look
and
good for them.
that is one perk of doing this 2 weeks late, is that they're so far as I know, have yet to say a word on this.
I know.
Um,
I don't know. I hear conspiracy theories, which I'm not going to say what my opinions on them are. That like they just wanted to shut Scott up.
Their internal Slack has been leaked to a news source, the Daily Beast or BuzzFeed or one of those, which showed that a number of people on their staff are pretty upset about this as well.
Good.
well, and that's the thing too that I thought was kind of interesting. Like this move on Scott's part, and so like this is the thing where like I'm totally prepared to say Scott is smarter than I am and probably did this with foresight, so he anticipated the likely consequences. Or it's entirely possible that this was a decision that was that's what I think is most likely. What's also a possibility is that he just kind of did this out of a rush of like, fuck, I need to kind of get off the grid, and as part of that move, blew the website away.
I think he's been thinking about this for a long time. I mean, he's even mentioned it.
Well, then that's weird because like what happened after this is everyone up to Steven Pinker and Sam Harris and people with aggregate millions of Twitter followers retweeted, "Hey, the New York Times just made Scott Alexander, or basically threatened to dox Scott Alexander, and he shut down the wonderful Slate Star Codex." So now, not only is literally everyone aware of the website, people who may have not even known of it before, but I think there are, and I garnered this from Reddit threads and stuff on r/Slate Star Codex. A lot of people didn't even know that wasn't his real name. Now, granted, if you're a longtime reader, he explicitly says it's a pseudonym, but if you read the occasional popular post, you'll just think that some guy actually named Scott Alexander runs a blog called Slate Star Codex.
Yeah, but he still doesn't have his real name linked to the blog, which was his goal, so he's fine.
Right.
And I think he's gone through some effort to try to keep himself like a moderately paranoid pseudonymous. That there's a word that I can't pronounce, but that word
pseudonymous.
But like because HIPAA and these psychiatrists, it's like very reasonable to have expected this is going to be the outcome of him ever becoming famous at some point. He's written about it.
I think like the other maybe foreseen, maybe unforeseen fallout is that people are going to be like, oh, who is this guy? And it's not that hard to connect the dots if you try. I haven't checked. I wonder if I Googled Scott Alexander's real name, if his real name would come up.
So I actually have found Scott Alexander's real name. This was like a year and a half, 2 years ago. I was just kind of curious. It's not terribly hard to find if you are. It
used to be easier to find.
Okay, yeah, if you're a religious reader of his blog and you've picked up a lot of like small details here and there about his life, it at least, yeah, several years ago, it was pretty easy to find. It's probably much harder now, but that doesn't really matter because, first of all, I had to be a religious reader who had picked up a lot of small details over a long period of time, and also, there's no way you can Google Slate Star Codex and get his real name. Like, you have to put effort into it, and that's basically what he wants. To just not make it so that you Google Slate Star Codex and he pops up.
Yeah, and I think maybe that was the goal, but now I think people will be inclined to maybe look for his real name, and if that's not what he wanted, then...
That's the exact opposite of what he wanted. I intentionally did not look for it because he requested, like, please don't Google my real name. I just don't...
Well,
I prefer people
that's because
not
we're
it.
Nice. That's because we're nice and we're not going to.
Oh, no,
but
definitely.
like, if
people,
you're just
if they're...
a person... This hit the front page of r/Out of the Loop the day that it happened. And I don't know how popular that subreddit is. I could check, but I won't because I'm live on the air, or at least on a hot mic, and it's annoying to hear typing. But it's a somewhat very popular subreddit, I think, with hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And anyone who's on there saw this post of, oh, what is going on? What's Slate Star Codex? Who's this hidden psychiatrist? So, like, it's interesting. I came across his name happenstance like 5 years ago, maybe more, whenever we started doing the Less Wrong meetups. And I actually was like, wait, who's this? And they're like, oh, that's Scott Alexander. And I was like, oh, why not just put that? And so now we do have that actually on our, the local meetups Facebook group on the little primer doc. It used to contain Scott Alexander's real name, but the published version on our website doesn't. So I don't know. I don't have much to add other than like I wonder what all the fallout will be from this. If this will lead to more people knowing who he is, And I mean, obviously, it's worth mentioning the lamenting fact that like Slate Star Codex was a treasure, and the universe is worse off without it.
Yeah, not only is it worse off for not having the things that used to be around easily accessible, because they are still accessible with some effort, but having it to go through all the extra hoops really is a pain in the ass, and I dislike that too. But like, it was a community. It was where a lot of Less Wrong eventually coalesced around after the original Less Wrong sort of dissipated, and much more. What really, really upsets me is that if Slate Star Codex stays gone, it's all the future work that will not be created now. It's like if someone had murdered a brilliant scientist when he was in his mid-30s, and all those other decades of things that he would have discovered and published on are gone. Or if someone, like, killed Kurt Cobain when he was 27, and all the other decades of groundbreaking music he didn't create. And, and someone did kill him. It was him, and we lost all those decades of music, and that sucks. And this just, to me, feels like the same kind of thing. Like, all the years of amazing shit that Slate Star Codex will have been putting out in the future might never happen now. And that is really what I find just awful about this whole situation.
I have really mixed feelings where, on one hand, I think it would be cool if this did actually lead to Slate Star Codex becoming more widely known. And then there's also the negative. I just honestly can't understand how, like, the previous social justice community that I was in, like, everyone had this incredibly negative view of Scott Alexander as another capital P problematic, capital B bad person with cuties, where if you read one of his blog posts, now you have the cuties. And it's just, well, like, have you read any of his posts? Because he's just the most reasonable, kind person, willing to bend so far backwards to, like, not offend anyone.
Yeah, well, it's because sometimes the reasonable, kind things he said were unwoke, and that's enough to make you literal Hitler.
Yeah, I've seen these conversations happen in just the last couple of weeks. Well, I guess in the last month. I think it was all before Slate Star Codex exploded. But I know some people who would no doubt be rejoicing over it.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And I don't, and that's just whatever. I don't have the energy this late in the night. I spent all my emotions for the month on our last conversations, so I don't have what it takes to engage with that, sad nonsense. But, if there are people who, that's not to say I agree with literally everything he's put to the page, but I've loved all of it.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. It's, if I don't agree with it, it's for really, I find myself even more engaged with it, and that's a rewarding experience. And more often than not, I do agree with it. In fact, more often than either of those things, I'm just learning something completely new.
Yeah.
Oh my god, the amount of, the amount of stuff I've learned from Slate Star Codex is just, probably more than I would have learned in, if I went to college and got, a bachelor's degree in psychiatry about, especially the stuff about, the surfing uncertainty. Now I'm blanking on words again, but that whole thing.
Yeah. It was just earlier this year that we did his conflict versus mistake theory on this podcast, right?
Yeah, and there's just so many excellent ideas and concepts that he's brought up. Or even, But, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if in, a couple of weeks there's, a blog titled something that's a pun or an anagram of Slate Star Codex written by some other pseudonym person. It sounds a lot like Scott. Does anyone remember The Last Psychiatrist?
Alex Scottskerson.
Yeah, I was talking about that actually with a friend who messaged me when he heard about this, and he was like, this is, saying all the same things, like this is a fucking tragedy, and it's, this is a resource now lost forever, and that's I can't link my friends to the meditations on Moloch or whatever. And I was like, I think that in the future outcome where the blog stays dead, keep your eyes open for a burgeoning new rationalist blog with a different author's name.
I hope so.
I can't imagine. I think it would be weird. I only say that because he seems like the person who doesn't just really, really enjoy writing posts, but I feel like he has a drive to do it, which maybe is part of what makes you enjoy it. I don't think that he'll stop writing. I think he might take a break.
I think he needs he deserves a vacation. It was one of my first thoughts that a jumble of thoughts jumped into my head when I saw that this had happened, but one of them was I hope he goes to Hawaii and like sips some margaritas on the beach for a bit, because like we should like start a GoFundMe to just send Scott Alexander on a nice vacation as a community.
I hope he's well enough off being, having been a doctor for this many years, and I'm not sure what the ad revenue is from Slate Star Codex, but I hope he doesn't need to GoFundMe to take a vacation.
But he might need
good
like
vacations.
the encouragement.
Well, we should start a change.org petition. Say, Scott, take a vacation.
Please be kind to yourself. Do some self-care.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure he's up on the literature on all that stuff too. So.
I want to mention. Oh, I have one more thing to add.
Yeah.
I believe his Tumblr, Slate Star Scratchpad, still exists. He'll probably keep posting there. I feel like it's fine to share that with the Bayesian conspiracy community, and I doubt that it's going to get back to the New York Times or that they're going to be able to do anything about it.
And also, you'd have to go through 2 hours of a podcast to get to this, so...
Who wants to listen to us for that long?
Right.
Only all those people on Discord. Sometimes I'm just like, why are you here? Like, why? These people who inexplicably like to listen to us ramble. I like listening to us ramble, though. I think we're pretty good at it.
All right, shall we wrap up then?
Let's
I think so.
Super do that. It's late.
Cool. I know we usually thank a patron. I was thinking maybe this time, can we just thank Scott Alexander for all the work he's done for the Rationalist community?
Yeah, 100%.
He's done a lot.
I think that makes sense.
A guiding light for a long time, and he's like really helped a lot of communities grow up across the nation, probably even across the world, with his Slate Star Codex meetups and the having that focal point on his website where people can say, "Hey, I'm in this city. Is there a meetup near me?" has really helped people get to know other rationalists in their area, and that's awesome too. So. Thank you for everything you've done, Scott. I know you're probably not listening to this, but God, we appreciate it so much, and I hope this ends quickly and in your favor, because I want more Slate Star Codex, and the New York Times can die in a fire for all I care.
For real.
I think you said that on the Mind Killer, right, Inyash, that you prefer a world where where Slate Star Codex existed over a world where the New York Times existed, if we had to pick one.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I might agree with you.
I agree so hard with that. The amount of value that I get out of every Slate Star Codex post, they're funny, they're educational, they raise good questions, and promote excellent discourse. And then there's the New York Times, which does like some of those things some of the time, maybe.
Yeah. And then they randomly dox good people for no reason. Or threaten to. I guess they haven't actually done it yet.
Yeah, and we didn't get into all the convoluted nonsense of, like, does this count as doxing, or, what is pseudonymity, or whatever. Like, all that's aside. The
long episode that we may or may not do.
And I'm kind of just fine totally ignoring that and just saying, like, look, he asked you not to, you said you'd do it anyway, so now the blog is gone, so that's kind of a fucked up bully move of you guys to pull. So yeah, 3 cheers for Scott Alexander. I hope you continue to, create stuff for the world, but if you want to lay low for a while, we totally get it. And, I am prepared to guess, I was going to say speak for, but I'm prepared to guess that the entire rationalist community is 100% behind you. And, I imagine right now it's just kind of like a PR storm over at the New York Times trying to figure out how do we defuse this without saying we did anything wrong. So when they finally come forward with their conciliatory but non-guilt expressing statement, then we all come out winners. So
hell yeah.
We'll see how it shakes out.
I'm very curious to see how it shakes out.
All right, well, I think that's the end of the episode, unless anyone has anything else.
No, just reminders that we're doing My Wild and Reckless Youth and Failings Learned from History. And do check the show notes for some stuff this episode. We're going to link at least to the Dave Chappelle special and the Yudkowsky Medium essay on police reform. Yes. And probably whatever else we can think of. Check the show notes. Oh, and I need to mention once in a while during the episodes, the link to our Discord is in the show notes for every episode. Once in a while, rarely, but totally worth enough to mention it on the air. I'm asked, like, how do I find the Discord? It is in the show notes for the episode. So if you want to have these conversations with people and not just listen to people talk about it every couple of weeks, you can find us live and find dozens of active people and hundreds of lurkers on our Discord. So hang out with us there.
It's also linked right at the top of our webpage, thebayesianconspiracy.com.
There we go.
All right, thanks for joining us, everybody, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
See ya.